Welcome to this edition of Decoding Diplomacy. I have with me in studio veteran diplomat Veena Sikri. She was the High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh, to Malaysia, and she also served as Director General of Indian Council for Cultural Relations. Ambassador Sikri straddles the worlds of academia and diplomacy with effortless ease. She's also a staunch advocate of women empowerment and worked on gender studies and issues such as, bringing soft power. And her publications include India and Malaysia, Intertwined Strands. She's currently working on a book titled The Geopolitics of Bangladesh, which whenever it comes out, whenever it's published, will hopefully provide a deeper insight into what's unfolding here. So welcome to this edition of Decoding Diplomacy, Ambassador Sikri. My first question is, what is your take on this interim government? I mean, it's a motley bunch of people. Some of them seem to be of some stature, but there are concerns also about governance, the quality of governance. What can we expect from them? Because anarchy is still ruling, students are still restless, and we don't know when situation will stabilize for governance to take the center stage. Over to you.
Thank you for inviting me to your show, and thank you for your kind introduction. I think that yes, we need to look very deeply at what is happening in Bangladesh, because every day the news coming out of there is more worrying than the previous day, and I think that it's alarming to know how the situation is unfurling like this. I think first of all, to say that this is entirely a student-led movement is incorrect. And it is really a coup, really a regime change operation that was put into place. We can discuss how and when and by whom. But the name of the students is being used as though they are the ones who are deciding everything. I say this for a certain reason. I say this because, the students and the Awami League government of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, they were actually on the same page. And actually, we must also recall that the abolition of the students' quota was done by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina way back in 2018. So right. Actually, for 6 years, there had been no quota in Bangladesh at all. Only in June of this year, suddenly somebody filed an appeal in the High Court, and you had a decision by the High Court judge, they are restoring the quota. At that point, the government itself decided to go to the Supreme Court. And when they went to the Supreme Court, there were some students groups with them in that appeal. So it's not as if the students have been in this kind of great opposition to Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Now, then there's the other thought that is always coming out on the media about, that it was not an inclusive government, there was no participation in the election. But my point is that I think that issue and the students' issue, I don't know how and why they're all being mixed up, because we do know that right till 15th of July, there was a completely peaceful demonstration by the students. Prime Minister came to India, she went to China, but after 15th of July, because there was the statement of the misuse of the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina statement on the Razakars. She was talking about reservations and saying, of course, we will reserve it only for the children of Razakars and not for the children, only for the children of the freedom fighters and not for the children of the Razakars. Now, this was misunderstood and converted into something else, and we saw that at this stage, when the students were trying to call themselves Razakars, the Chhatra League, the Awami League student wing, came into action, and the violence started then. The moment the violence started, we had the Islamic Chhatra Shibir come into it, and we had the BNP youth wing come into it, and they have taken over the whole demonstration. So since then, it has been entirely a movement led by the Jamaat Islami and its student wing, the Islamic Chhatra Shibir. And I think that it is quite likely that the Jamaat Islami and the army at one stage, when they came to say that we will not use any more force and we want Sheikh Hasina to resign, this is the demand of the Jamaat, the pro-Jamaat group in the army. They have made this demand because actually, you've seen them asking for it. And then after that, she goes. And then after that, there are changes made in the army. People have been asked to step down. There'll be a new army chief very soon. So who is the Jamaat in contact with? They're in contact with Pakistan. And through Pakistan, you have, now you have that Professor Muhammad Yunus as the chief of the interim government. You can see that he's backed by America. So I think all these aspects have to be looked at. But we have to particularly see that between the 5th of August, when former Prime Minister left the country, Sheikh Hasina left the country, and 8th evening, 4 days gap between this, there was complete anarchy in the country. No governance at all. There was violence against Hindus on a huge scale, not seen before in a very, very long time. Violence against the Awami leaders. And in Dhaka, there was complete destruction of Sheikh Mujib statue, destruction of Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore statue. The Indian Cultural Center was burnt to the ground, and so much so that the Indian government had to consider the security situation so seriously that our staff has been called back, and only minimal staff is there, and all visa operations have been stopped. So there are no visa operations now between India and Bangladesh. Now, in this absolutely alarming situation, the new government was sworn in on the 8th evening, and at that time, when Professor Muhammad Yunus came back from Paris and reached Dhaka, he did ask. His first appeal was for stopping the violence. And he said that you must stop the violence, and the violence cannot go on. Otherwise, why am I here? But he also said that this is the second liberation. He also said the second liberation. Now, my question is, second liberation from what? From the first liberation. So is this an indication of overturning the values of the first liberation and coming to a second liberation, which will have its own very different values? It seems from his statement, that's all I'm judging from there. So, these are the indications that we have, and we have to look at the meaning of these kind of statements. If you look at the composition of the interim government, there was a lot of talk that there would be no political parties, they're only technocrats, and this is only for governance for a short while, and then there'll be elections after that, and free fair elections what the students want, because they have not been able to participate in earlier elections. So all this was being talked about at that time. But now I think the talk has completely changed, even within a few days. Now, for example, if there is governance, if there's interim government, then shouldn't that government be deciding on the posts of DGP or the post of the head of RAB? But all this has already been done before. So who did it? Who was the one who took decisions?
Right.
Army. And then in the government itself, in the interim government itself, there are no other political parties. Certainly there is no Awami League. And there is no inclusivity, because Awami League was not invited even for the swearing-in ceremony. Neither Awami League nor the 14-party alliance. But there is one representative, Khalid Hussain, you can see his name. He is the head of Hifazat Islam, and he is the head of Islami Andolan Bangladesh. So he is advising the Islami Andolan Bangladesh. So my question is, he is advising a political party, so he's a political person. And Hifazat Islam, as you know, was the organization which actually was created in 2010 to ensure that there was Islamic rule in Bangladesh. And in fact, the first thing that they did was opposed the then Sheikh Hasina's Prime Minister, her women development policy. And they didn't allow her to go forward with it. Or they said this is against Islam. So this Hifazat Islam was also the organization in 2021 who initiated riots and killings, including attacks on Hindus, when Prime Minister Modi was there for the Golden Jubilee celebration of the Liberation War. I think that this is apolitical. This is very difficult. So the third consideration I have is that, all right, between 5th and 8th, there was anarchy. But now, even after this swearing in of the government and the meetings they have held, we still find the students playing some kind of an activist role. They're going, today they surrounded the Supreme Court, asked the resignation of the Supreme Court, and he has resigned. So it's very difficult to know what they're doing.
If I may ask you at this point, when we are talking about students, it would, we also need to nuance that, because students are we talking primarily about the student wing of Jamaat Islami, who are the primary mover, primary orchestrator. So, when we say student-led protests or student-led revolution and all that, I think it's slightly distorting, because these are the political, a lot of them are political operatives. And that's an important point. And another thing, a very important point you made, which which was about that, purges that happened very quickly after Sheikh Hasina left Dhaka for Delhi. And that happened significantly, as you said, before the new government took charge. It was for them to do it. So my question is that to what extent uh, the Jamaat Islami, radical Islamist forces, to what extent they have influenced the formation of this interim government? What is their agenda? I mean, in what will it manifest in?
Well,
What kind of changes would we see? Yeah.
I think that you're absolutely right. The Jamaat-e-Islami is fully in charge. And
Mhm.
I'm saying this for two or three reasons. They're fully in charge. They're controlling the agenda. In fact, they have usurped the agenda even before Professor Muhammad Yunus came back to Dhaka. Because I've told you about the purges,
Mhm.
that in the new police chief, the new RDB chief, the new, the officers of the army who've been asked to step down. There's talk of a new army chief coming. Now, in the districts, there is no police at all everywhere. There is no bureaucracy at all
Mhm.
everywhere. There is no deputy commissioner. There is no superintendent of police. So in the villages, there is a complete anarchy. There is no governance at all. Now there's talk of saying
Mhm.
that we will want to have a revolutionary committee, a special committee, village committee being set up. Although there's already a
Mhm.
local governance, there are UNOs, there are Upazila officers, and all that are there, but they're no
Mhm.
longer be seen because they
Mhm.
all think they are going to be victimized. The police thinks they will be victimized for what they have done. They were whatever they did. And the UNOs, the Upazila
Mhm.
people think they will be victimized, the SP and the DC. So there is no, the old structure seems to have completely collapsed. And this is a matter of great worry because
Mhm.
how are you going to reinstate a new structure like this? Now there is talk the not talk but interviews given. I'm not even talking of talk, but interviews given that we need to change the constitution. That is,
Mhm.
there's talk we change the old constitution is not relevant anymore. But this is more in keeping with what Professor Muhammad Yunus is saying about the second liberation. It's more in keeping with the
Mhm.
destruction of the memory of Sheikh Mujib, because not only his statues were broken down, but everywhere where his mural or painting was there, it was all whitewashed. So the
Mhm.
absolute every attempt is being made. Anywhere his name is used for a hospital or an institution or a road, is being wiped out.
Mhm.
So there is complete effort to obliterate the memory of Sheikh Mujib. And I would say that when
Mhm.
I say the Jamaat is fully in charge, I think they are trying to edge out even the BNP. You say that okay, Jamaat and BNP led the movement, but today the BNP is nowhere to be seen. The
Mhm.
BNP, the BNP is not a cadre-based organization. So in the rural areas, it's a Jamaat which is the cadre-based organization. Jamaat and Awami League. So Awami League is under attack, and Jamaat is leading the attack. So you have this. The
Mhm.
attack on Hindus is being done by whom? The attack on minorities is being done by whom?
Mhm.
It is so serious that our Prime Minister, in his message to Professor Muhammad Yunus, congratulating him on taking over, he mentioned this, that we
Mhm.
want, that the attacks on the minorities and the Hindus and other minorities must stop. There must be a return to
Mhm.
normalcy. Now, normalcy, as defined by this
Mhm.
group, by the interim government, seems to be
Mhm.
very different from the normalcy of the earlier times. As of today,
Mhm.
you have not only seen the Chief Justice being forced to resign at the behest of the students. Now, if you want the Chief Justice to resign, why should it be seen at the behest of the students?
So,
The students are supposed to go back to the universities and do their work. And are you going to say a student, first year, second year,
mhm.
third year, master, they're all going to be on the streets and do this? This is not a remedy, not a recipe for peace and tranquility, not a recipe
So,
for normalcy. So and then I've also seen a video today talking about India's interests. There's a video today of somebody going around all the marketplace in Bangladesh on the India Out campaign, giving leaflets to the people, checking which
right.
Indian product that person has in his shop, and saying, "Look, make sure you don't order any more of these. You must not have any Indian products here." So one really
Mhm.
wonders what is the objective of all these attitudes
Right.
and
Uh,
programs that are being conducted.
right. Another thing, what you are talking about is ruled by dictates, is a form of mobocracy, which is supported by the regime. And this whole regime change was apparently the ouster of Sheikh Hasina was justified or rationalized because of democracy, erosion of democracy. or democracy deficit, that she had become autocratic and all that. But from the kind of anarchy we are saying and the ascendance of radical Islamist forces, and we know what Jamaat stands for, we'll have probably another a kind of worst kind of authoritarianism, Islamist theocratic authoritarianism, right? So, I mean, what I'm trying to figure out is this: that if the US was behind bringing Muhammad Yunus in the saddle in Dhaka, then, I mean, and also the response of the Western countries, don't they see these contradictions? I mean, it's like you're handing over the country, and secularism, which is a forte, which emerged as a citadel and a part of Bangladesh identity, is now completely under threat.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. I think this is a matter of great worry particularly because, and this reinforces one view that this is supported by the West, because the Western media has completely ignored what is happening in Bangladesh. They don't write about the attacks on the Hindus. New York Times dismissed it in half a line, saying revenge attacks. Now, in a democracy, is revenge attacks, are they the norm? And yesterday, when BBC was wanting to interview me, they were saying, this person, somebody in Bangladesh, is justifying the attacks because, saying the Awami League is the enemy. I said, in a democracy, do you talk about enemy? A political opponent, I mean, you have a political opponent, fine. You fight elections, you come back, you want inclusive elections, that's fine. But this talk of enemy and killing the enemy, justifying the enemy, I mean, is this a guerrilla warfare? Or what is it? So, this language is very worrisome. The Western media is completely ignoring what's happening on the ground. They are only talking about student-led movement. And actually, it is not a student-led movement. Actually, the students are being used for the movement, And I'm telling you, as I said, the students and Sheikh Hasina were on the same page. And many of the students are Awami League supporters, but they are being hounded now. And they are being very worried about that. So it really is a mystery. And why would, when President Muhammad Sheikh Yunus is there, if they feel that you want the Chief Justice to step down or you want something, you can discuss it. But why show it to the world that the students are doing it? You're showing an anarchy that really does not go very well for the future of Bangladesh, because students should be in the university completing their studies. Not, getting the Chief Justice to resign. I mean, after all, the Supreme Court Chief Justice, let us face it, on 21st July, he is the one who gave the judgment saying that the quotas would be reduced to 5% for children of freedom fighters and 2% for others. So he actually solved the whole situation by giving the judgment that the students wanted. And after he gave the judgment, some students groups even said that we're putting a moratorium on our protests and we are willing to talk to the government. They gave a list of demands that they wanted to talk to the government. And these included apology by Sheikh Hasina and so on. But the violence wouldn't stop. So my question is that why is it that the students are being shown as demanding the resignation of the Chief Justice? So all these questions are really leading us into a really worrisome look at what's happening in Bangladesh.
Ma'am, looking ahead, Basil Sikri, in terms of domestic politics, I mean, what we're talking about for the last few minutes, about the rise of the Islamic right, radical Islamists, Jamaat and all that. So, I mean, the politics in Bangladesh domestic will take a clear rightward turn, and which is deeply worrisome for the entire region, not just for Bangladesh. But my question is, how will it manifest in concrete terms? Because Jamaat swears by establishing Sharia, Islamic state, Islamic theocratic state, So I'm wondering that what would it mean about the status of women, for example? I mean, last few years of Sheikh Hasina's rule has seen a resurgence of Bangladesh, economic and otherwise. Of course, there were other things that's a separate debate. But what happens? I mean, in what way domestic politics will be impacted? And in terms of policies?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. One has to look at domestic politics, the internal situation in Bangladesh, before one begins to look at foreign policy and the options in foreign policy. And I agree with you that if indeed it is the Hifazat-e-Islam that is going to
Yeah.
rule the roost, because the head of the Hifaz, the Amir of the Hifazat Islam, is a member of the interim government. So then certainly you can expect that the policies of Hifazat Islam will be ruling the roost. They are including anti-Indianism. The Amir of the Hifazat Islam has been spreading a lot of making speeches about it very directly, because the earlier chief of the Amir of the Hifazat Islam was actually in touch with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, and they had even worked out some agreements. And in fact, part of the agreement is that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina had agreed to accept the Qawmi Madrasa degree as equivalent to the one of secular education for allowing people to join the civil service. So now you can expect
Right.
all that to be completely enhanced. And I think the anti-Indianism is something that you will see on a daily basis. We've already seen the WhatsApp
Right.
of India Out campaign re-emerging. They tried to make it emerge earlier when Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was still there. Then it was dormant for a while because nobody paid any attention to it, and now they're trying to revive it, to resuscitate it. So, and this in the domestic situation, the focus on Sharia law is definitely going to be there, and I don't know how it's going to be explained by a person like Professor Muhammad Yunus, who has absolutely secular credentials and has never allowed such a thing to happen. In fact, Professor Muhammad Yunus has been there now for almost 2 days. This evening it will be 2 days, but there's no statement from him after the first meeting of the committee. Second meeting, they
Right.
must be having. There's absolutely no statement from
Right.
him, no word on the policy that he's going to follow. And I do very much fear that this kind of absolute reform that is now being talked about, change, I won't say reform, I'll call it a wholesale change that is being looked at. One is apprehensive to estimate the extent of change that will come.
So, I mean, what you're talking about, a paradigm, it's not just a regime change. Even the nature of the Bangladeshi state, that may change. That is what is implied by second liberation.
Yes.
Rewriting of history, that whole project. We'll have new canon. I mean, it means a lot. So, I mean, of course, this is deeply worrisome, and we don't know where it is headed. But now, Ambassador Sikri, coming to the foreign policy part, the new, I mean, foreign affairs advisor, Muhammad Hussain, former foreign secretary, he is not known to be particularly friendly towards India. And one of the things he has spoken about in the last few days is striking a balance in dealings with big countries. He's also spoken about how Bangladesh needs to focus more on the West rather than Asia, Asia and all that. And we can see again, shades of anti-India rhetoric there, of revising India policy. What do you make out of the foreign policy outlook of the interim government?
Well, Mr. Tawhid Hussain, I know him. He became foreign secretary just a little bit after I left at the end of 2006, and then he was foreign secretary for almost 3 years. But before that, he had worked in Calcutta as the deputy high commissioner in Calcutta, and of course, there is it was very uncomfortable. Of course, Begum Haldadia was the prime minister in Dhaka, and all this was very much in keeping with her policies. And yes, his policy is very strange. His remarks on dealing with the West. Now, does it mean that he's going to do the West bidding? Because Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina at that time had said about the St. Martin's Island and how a certain Western country had asked her for a base on St. Martin's Island and so on. Now, it's interesting, particularly because you may say as much as you want about the West and wanting St. Martin's Island, but you think that either China or the Jamaat-e-Islami are going to agree to this? I think it's most unlikely, because if you see that if you say that, okay, this is Pakistan has done this, and with the support of America, and China is an active person in the whole thing, whether directly active or indirectly active, I don't know. But they want their wishes. When Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina went to China in the second week of July, just now, just less than a month
Yeah, yeah,
ago.
yeah. Yes.
Yeah, the biggest shock was the way the Chinese government treated her. And I must tell you
Yes.
that the first indication that became very evident, because up till then, there was student protest, but they were so peaceful. There were visuals coming out of Dhaka that the police is standing by and the students are protesting
Mm.
peacefully and so on. It was absolutely till the 15th of July, there was not any violence
Yeah.
at all in Dhaka.
Hmm.
So she came to India, she went there. So when she went to China, and then she was treated with such scant respect, no protocol, no meeting, bilateral meeting with President Xi Jinping, no economic assistance, very little economic assistance or financial support. Uh, it really made me wonder what has happened. So much so she had to leave. She left Beijing a day early because she realized there was nothing more for her to do there, and she was being treated with such complete disdain by the Chinese. And when one thought about it, that because Chinese don't normally do this, you don't invite somebody to your home and then treat them like this. You can tell the person not to come. The person can come later. You can say, I'll arrange your visit later. But this idea of directly insulting her by calling her there and then treating her like that
Mm.
must be to show her that we no longer consider you our partner. We no longer consider
Hmm.
you as so it was the first indication that something was in the offing, actually,
Hmm.
and I had written about it in my India Today article. I hinted
Hmm.
at that. Now, so when you talk about Tawheed Hussain talking about the dealings with the West, what about the dealings with China? Because they have a huge debt commitment to China. There are a huge number of projects that China is doing. There's a huge number of
Hmm.
defense purchases that China is giving, defense equipment that Bangladesh is purchasing and China is giving to them. China has demanded the Tista project, you know, and Sheikh Hasina had said quite clearly that, look, Tista is a bilateral river between India and Bangladesh, so it's better that India does the Tista water management and conservation project. So I think that, again, this was something that has to be looked at very carefully. Does China want that Tista project? They will insist upon it, and this is going to be a real security red line for India. You know, there are a number of other projects that China
Hmm.
had been
Right.
demanding, including in Panchangad in the north, adjacent to the Chicken's Neck. And if they're going to get some of those projects, real security red lines. So what are you going to do about that? I mean, there's going to be a really a very serious situation.
Hmm. So, what about now? It seems that you rightly pointed out that China will have greater sway over Bangladesh, and what does it mean for India? I mean, the India-China competition will intensify. I guess we need to also do counter that. And just wanted to point out, what about BRI? What about Tawheed Hussain, who is such an admirer of the West? Uh,
Yeah,
how does he square up relationship with the West and relationship with China?
yeah. You
That is a
see,
very
now,
important.
very important factor. And you're right. I look, a point is, long before we think of countering or doing something, we have to understand what is going on there. And I think
Right.
what is going on in Bangladesh, what are the forces, what are they going to do about it? So now the point
Mhm.
is that if you talk of the West, if you talk of Bangladesh exports to the West, yes, the West is a very big market for Bangladesh's exports, and USA and the EU are the prime markets for Bangladesh, and they've been looking to extend the GSP facility. They've been looking to extend all kinds of concessions even after they graduate out of the least developed country status. But I think the important
Right.
point to see is that those exports that Bangladesh does to the West is very much based on what they import from India, whether it is cotton
Hmm.
yarn, whether it is man-made yarn, whether it is textile machinery, even the pharmaceutical sector is sort of depend on goods that they're
Hmm.
importing from India.
Hmm.
So while it is true that um, India's exports to Bangladesh are much higher than Bangladesh's exports to India, but these exports from India to Bangladesh go into the value-added chain in Bangladesh and then contribute to the
Hmm.
income they're getting, the foreign exchange they're earning from their exports. So if this stops, what happens? Where are they going to get this from? If you're going to get it from far away, your cost will increase. Transportation cost will increase. The value of the goods cost will increase. You were giving them a very good price. Then we have given Bangladesh complete access to the Indian market, except for a few
Hmm.
minor projects like alcohol, etc. So
Hmm.
when they have this complete access to the Indian market, through this, Bangladesh's exports to India have gone up to 2 billion US dollars. Now, 2 billion US dollars is a huge amount, considering the fact that when I was there in Bangladesh, the exports were just $50 million, and I made it my task to double it to 100 million, which I did. But now it is 2 billion, which is very valuable. I think the Indian market is very valuable and important for the Bangladesh people, for
Right.
the Bangladesh manufacturers. So what will happen to that? So it's a two-way street, it's a two-way street, and we have to discuss and look at all the issues very carefully before we see that how this is going to progress.
Ambassador Sikri, another important point which Tawhid Hussain makes in one of his columns, that India-Bangladesh relations, it seems that he says that has not been reciprocal. While Bangladesh has delivered, India has not delivered. I mean, this is contrary to, what a lot of people otherwise believe. But this is like a shifting narrative, about there is much more here. So what do you make out of this? And is it, I mean, you have known him, you must have interacted with him. In what way you are knowing everything with all those challenges, with the perceived, if not hostility, uh, uh, lukewarm attitude towards India, what kind of foreign policy, what kind of diplomatic posture we can expect from Bangladesh administration in days to come?
Well, I think that this kind of, if Tawhid Hussain, he has written these articles, he is very hostile to India. So I suppose you will have a continuation of that, definitely. Now, Professor Dr. Muhammad Yunus is the chief, but will he have a say in all of this? He is an elderly gentleman, he's 84 years old. How much is he going to be able to control the interim government and, have policies there, discuss policies there, get policies approved there, which are balanced, which are going to be, equidistant, which are going to be based on the win-win situation. Because I think here, Wahid Hussain is not accurate at all. He's quite inaccurate when he says it's benefiting only India. I just explained to you how the trade between India and
Right, right,
Bangladesh, including
right.
is mutually is greatly beneficial to Bangladesh. Even the connectivity projects, we have heard about all the connectivity projects that we are undertaking, whether it is Agartala, Khora, whether it is your river transportation from Mongla port to Zakiganj in the northeast. All these are all being done by Bangladesh logistics companies. These are all Bangladeshi projects. They're all getting the money is going to Bangladesh. And India is paying a fee for
Right.
it, of course. You can expect a big cry that the fee should be made 10 times more or 20 times more, etc., etc. So, this is a huge a huge backlash that we can expect from there. But at the same time, if they are going to, like, being forced to stop our visa services, have been stopped because of the security factor. I told you that the Indian Contact
Right,
Center
right.
was, and people have gone back, and the visa is stopped. Now, all the people, the visa operation between India and Bangladesh is the biggest between any two countries anywhere in the world. You
Right,
know,
right.
1.5 to 2 million visas a year. So
My God.
now, if it is stopped, there is a huge problem. I mean, the people of Bangladesh who want to come to India, okay, are they going to accept it? Are they going to be happy with the situation? There are students, there are business people, there are people coming on pilgrims, huge numbers coming for medical treatment. It's a huge important factor, and we have such a diverse cooperation between the defense forces, between the students, the projects we are building for the high visibility community projects that we are building. So many things are in the pipeline and have been completed. If we look at now, for example, the friendship pipeline, bringing petroleum products from the Numaligarh refinery in Assam to the north of Bangladesh. Instead of getting the same petroleum product coming by ship from a foreign country to Chittagong, then being transshipped to a road transport, and then being carried all the way north to the north, to Sylhet and other regions in the north. This was happening for the last 50 years. But now we have got the the friendship pipeline, and at a great saving of financial resources, pollution, environmental issues, this petroleum products are going directly to the people of Bangladesh. Now, do they want it to stop? That's another question. So all these issues are there, it's to be seen. There have to be
Yeah, yeah.
discussions, there have to be very frank talks, and I'm sure that these will happen in the near future.
The last couple of questions, coming back to the role of the United States, the way Bangladesh is going, on domestic front, the rightward turn, on the foreign policy front, there's lack of clarity, but possible turn, deepening of Dhaka Beijing relations. I mean, what role, what lever the United States has to shape the future of Bangladesh, as it to prevent Bangladesh from leaning far to right, to stop it from getting sucked into the embrace of China.
Well, I think that first thing is, one thing is to just put pressure for the sake of putting pressure and say that, we want this from you, we want that from you. The other is to look at the situation on the ground in Bangladesh and how that is going to develop. And if you have a huge right-wing movement, the Jamaat Islami controlling all the shots, the Hifazat Islam is already in the interim government, then what kind of policy are they going to bring in? I mean, for example, with
Right.
Afghanistan, the struggle is still on. The world community is struggling with Afghanistan because, the policy against women is there, the policy of Islamic punishment is there. There are a huge number of policies which the West finds completely unpalatable and unable to accept. Now, they want a similar situation in Bangladesh. This is to be seen because whether the Jamaat Islami will prevail or the American wish will prevail is a matter to be seen. And I think that it may turn out that engineering a collapse of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's government may have been the easier part of the problem. The real problem lies much ahead. The major part, the real issues lie ahead, and I don't think they're going to be easy at all. It's going to be
Right.
difficult for India. It's going to be very, very difficult for America and even for China.
Right.
Because here you have a situation where countries where parties like the Jamaat Islami and the Hifazat Islam, who are at the drop of a hat will criticize something happening in India, even including the CAA or anything that they feel is they start criticizing. But as far as China is concerned, they accept the treatment of the Uyghurs, they accept the terrible discrimination, the denial of right to worship, the denial of religious freedom. All that is fully accepted by Jamaat Islami, by Hifazat Islam, and by many, many others. Whereas, with India, so there are different standards. If you apply different standards, different yardsticks, different situations, you're going to fall into that trap yourself one day. This
Right.
is the
Right.
problem.
Uh, Now, to conclude, in terms of how should India navigate looking ahead? What kind of levers India still has? What I mean by that is, do we have uh, contacts, interface network which can tap into BNP? How do we reach out? Because we have come to be very identified, closely identified with Sheikh Hasina regime, and this is a hostile time for India. There's a lot of targeting of Indian assets, Hindu temples being attacked, all that. How do we protect our interests? How do we rebuild this relationship in this changed environment?
Look, I must tell you straight away that the story about Sheikh Hasina, we put all the eggs in one basket. This is easy to talk about, but it doesn't really happen because in politics you deal with everybody. You certainly deal
Right.
with the government power, and Sheikh Hasina was elected. Her 2009 majority. We saw the huge majority, and in
Mhm.
subsequent elections, the opposition didn't want to take part. So I'm sure that this year in
Mhm.
January, if the BNP had taken part, they would have got a large number of seats. In fact,
Mhm.
and perhaps the family was very worried
Mhm.
that if the BNP takes part, what will happen? So you can't not take part in an election and then criticize the election as non-participatory.
Mhm.
All the international
Right.
observers who went accepted. Now, for India, we are dealing with the government of the day. We are dealing with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in her capacity
Mhm.
as Prime Minister of Bangladesh with Awami League as a ruling party. But it doesn't mean we're not talking to anybody else. I mean, I
Right.
know that I was in Bangladesh when Begum Khalda Zia was the Prime Minister. And I was talking to her very much. I met her very often. I never had a problem where she refused to meet me, never. And I met all the ministers. And I also met Sheikh Hasina. She was the leader of the opposition. I met her. I met her, all her party members. I met the Jamaat Islami. Their leader was Jamaat Islami Amir, was the minister in Begum
Mhm.
Khalda Zia's government. So I met all of them. That is what the role of an ambassador is, and that's what we keep in touch with everybody. So it's not as if we are not in touch with everybody. But if you want to
Mhm.
use when you let us say one issue, for example, security issues. All right. So with Begum Khalida Zia's government, with the BNP government, which had Jamaat as a member, the biggest issue was security issues because they were not willing to recognize the presence of Northeast Indian insurgent groups on Bangladeshi soil and their anti-Indian activities from Bangladeshi soil. Now, this is a fundamental
Right.
security issue. And with every country, this is the agreement we look for that, there will be no anti-Indian activity on your soil. But in Begum Khalida Zia's time, this was happening. And when Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina came to power in 2009, and I would say even before that, in 2007 and 2008, when we had an army-backed caretaker government, they all recognized that yes, these are India's legitimate and very genuine security concerns, and they should be looked at. Even the army chief of the time recognized it. It was the first BMA army chief, General Moinuddin. And certainly when Sheikh Hasina came back to power in 2009 with a huge thumping majority, she recognized it. So this is a question of, if you want to develop relations, let us say the new regime wants to develop relations with India, and I'm sure they would because Bangladesh is surrounded on three sides, 4,000-kilometer long border with India, then they have to also be sensitive to India's security concerns and other concerns as well, but security concerns to begin with. So it's a mutual, by
Right.
developing a bilateral.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Yeah.
Right, right. Thank you, Ambassador Sikri, for that very insight, for your deep insights, for clarifying the picture with the voice of reason and sanity with so much chaos and anarchy is going on. We hope that, Bangladesh, as you know, our government has been saying, and the people of India also, that people of Bangladesh interest should be foremost in the mind of the rulers of Bangladesh. And that's where everything else possibly will fall into place. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah.